Hi, everyone, and welcome back to yet another cracking edition of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Influence series where we are talking to business leaders in different disciplines, all about this idea of influence and how they are using influence to elevate their customers and really transform industries. And with us in the hot seat today is Chip House. He is the Chief Marketing Officer for a cool company called Insightly. Chip, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, man, it's a real privilege. So, why don't you kick us off with the elevator pitch? What are you guys up to over there at Insightly?
Yeah, well, I think if you're in technology, especially, you've used a CRM before, and what we found from research, it bears it out as well, is most businesses tend to spend and overspend on a CRM that doesn't really fit their business's needs very well. And so Insightly is very much focused on delivering a modern CRM that's easy to use, affordable, and scales with your business as it grows. So you can get the functionality that you need for your business when you need it and scale and spend more over time versus having to, basically adopt the big blue cloud that everybody adopts because they think they have to. And most companies that are in the smaller, mid-sized business category do it with, out the ability to scale how they need, and they overspend.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to work at Accenture in another life, and we used to do systems implementations and upgrades and things like this. That's when I first came across what was it called? Siebel. I don't know if you ever remember that
Yeah, I
system.
remember Siebel back in the
Yeah,
day. Sure.
and now we're showing our age. But it's
Yeah.
I always wondered because it's come out. Then Salesforce happened, and then obviously they did what they did around cloud based technology and things. But when does a business get a CRM from your experience?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a great question. We still find that about 30% of the people that we talk to don't have a CRM, right? Even if they're like a mid-sized business. We were just at the QuickBooks conference sponsored by Intuit because we're an Intuit partner. A lot of our customers integrate with QuickBooks. Um, Although we're pretty industry agnostic, by the way, we kind of function across all industries. And so I think you get a CRM when you're to the point in your business where you're scaling and you're trying to keep track of all these prospects and customers that you're trying to manage in an efficient way. And so something's breaking down. Either your communication between teams is breaking down, or you're forgetting to follow up on things. So you need to automate some piece of your process with workflows, or you're just not selling enough, or you're not growing fast enough. So you have to do a better job of managing your leads and your opportunities. And in that situation, you probably have a sales team, that just needs to be more productive.
Hmm. Yeah, so for me, it's day one.
Yeah, it's day one for you.
If you're not, because otherwise, like, what do you do with all the leads and stuff? You know what I mean? Because you forget. You'd just be a very ineffective solopreneur if you didn't have a
Well, yeah,
CRM.
I tell you, I mean, it's especially like I said, I was, at this QuickBooks conference, and of course, there's a lot of spreadsheet jockeys there that are just happy to run to run on their spreadsheets as long as possible. Yeah.
Spreadsheet spreadsheet jockeys. That's classic. You find that in warehouse operations as well. Trying to manage inventory and stuff like that. One of my clients is Granite warehouse management software, and they he also talks about didn't call them spreadsheet jockeys, but I love that. That's awesome. So look, Chip. Obviously, I'd love to talk to you about marketing and influence, and so there's a couple of ideas that I want to land straight out the gate. The first one is from your perspective with your marketing hat on, what does influence actually mean to you? If you were to define it, what is it?
So influence is one of those things I think it's a bit nebulous. It's sort of you know it when you see it, right? But I think breaking it down for me, it sort of sits at the intersection of maybe charisma, substance, and trust. By being able to combine all those three things. And I just saw Ryan Reynolds speak, and he's really a kid at heart, right? But that guy has just loads and loads of charisma. I mean, it's almost like he built his entire business out of just being who he is, which is a phenomenal communicator and just, such a personality. And this is a kid who left home, in Vancouver, Canada, and told his parents he was quitting school, and so he could go join an improv group in LA, right? And so how often does that work out pretty well? And the guy's a billionaire. And I think he figured out marketing. He figured out how to write screenplays, how to become a professional soccer owner, football owner, all on his own. But I think because of, he's able to influence people with his, there's charisma, there's substance. And what I mean by that, there's intelligence, but there's also follow through. So it's not just an empty suit kind of thing. That's what I mean by substance. So the
Yeah.
person has the real deal.
Yeah.
And with that there becomes trust, because there's a track record of delivering, and so that's kind of how I define it. Is that good?
Dude, that's really good. I actually love that question because everybody always gives a different answer. It's really quite interesting. Someone should actually define it in the dictionary. Do you know what I mean? Like I defined it differently in my book, but I think pretty much every single conversation touches on this idea. And I love your reference to Ryan Reynolds. And I was listening or seeing something on UK media, I think this week. He's helping out a lot of people. I think one of his um, uh, the one of the guys who were working at the football club, his wife was diagnosed with brain cancer or something like this, and it was like the worst possible.
Yeah, at Wrexham. Yeah, right.
Wrexham.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go. That's
yeah.
it. Yeah, thank you. And so he was, when he heard about it, he was like, to your point around substance and charisma and stuff. He said to him, "Well, I'm going to refer you to my doctor to get a second opinion." So he did, and he went to go see Ryan Reynolds' doctor, and then it was the exact opposite diagnosis. It wasn't a brain tumor, do you know what I mean? And it was the best case scenario. And also, one guy's shop front window in Wrexham got broken into, and they smashed the thing and what have you. And he, paid to have that store renovated entirely, not just the window. And this is what I mean about influence. Influence for me specifically means to elevate others. That's what influence is there to do. It's the currency of business leaders. I mean, if you think about Nelson Mandela as an example, obviously I'm from South Africa. What was his influence? Well, he left South Africa in a much better place than where it was. Do you see what I'm saying? And when you look at
Entirely.
any major individual in history, the ones that truly changed the world, they were the definition of influencers, where they didn't, their mandate was not to elevate themselves, it was to elevate others and to ultimately make a contribution to society. And I think that's what Ryan Reynolds has done so well, because he has been able to build trust. He has consistently been a man of substance, a person of value, right? And then his charisma, as you rightly said, is also like in his films and everything else. It just comes through everywhere. Even the Mint, I think the Mint mobile ads. It's hilarious. It's always him. Do you know what I mean? And I think what's really surprising about Ryan is that he's been consistent. I think a lot of people they start and they do a good job for some time, and then you know what I mean. The wheels come off at some point.
Yeah, he's got multiple, feathers in his cap, so to speak. But I love Wrexham. By the way, I'm glad that we're talking about Wrexham,
Yeah, yeah,
because it's a classic story of, certainly he used his celebrity to kind of help make that whole town better. But he not only did he put his money behind it and his personality or whatever, but and made a lot of hard decisions, but he's right there with the people of the town trying to make their lives better and the players' life better. And so that's like the substance and the trust piece that has to be there to truly have influence.
yeah. And it was such a surprise as well. Like when it first broke that he had bought the club, it's like, what? Why would you do that? You know. But
Yeah.
I think, but I don't actually have the answer to that. Do you know? And obviously, in following the Wrexham story, probably a bit closer than I am. What was the reason for him buying that club at all?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Rob McElhenney is the other owner, and he's, as he said, he's only TV rich. He's on Sunny in Philadelphia. He's not movie star rich, and he was kind of realizing, wow, these team owners really do burn a lot of cash. So I need movie star rich, and so he was somehow connected to Ryan Reynolds, and so he reached out to him, and so I think he was brought into it, but Rob sold him on the vision of, hey, here's what we could do if we bought a soccer team in a small town that really need us. We could really change people's lives. And,
Mm, it's amazing. Yeah.
I think Ryan got excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. So let's change gears and bring it back to what you're doing And I'm curious to maybe go here. How important is product led growth to your particular business? Is that a key conduit to growth for you guys at the moment?
Yeah, we started there, right? In 2011, when we were incorporated, we had a CRM that was integrated on the Google App Store, and that's how initially Insightly, under Anthony Smith, who's our founder and initial coder of Insightly, um, chose to go to market. And soon afterwards, we were on the Microsoft App Store as well, right? Integrated with Outlook, et cetera. And that's how we started the business. And it grew into, we were one of the first companies to have a CRM trial and then a free CRM, which drove product-led growth, from 2011 to like 2017, basically. So we still have thousands of customers that use us in a self-service manner that have maybe 5 to 10 employees on their whole company, right?
Mm.
And thousands more that are 1 or 2 users on our free application, CRM. And so, yeah, PLG is still important, but to be honest, I was brought on with our head of sales to help us go up market, right? Because we have this great application that um, larger companies can use, especially as I already talked about. Some larger companies are struggling to, manage the ongoing total cost of ownership of some of the legacy CRMs that are out there, and they're just not getting what they need for the money that they're spending.
Mm.
And so we are actually finding, pretty good success in the mid market. And so, I mean, company size of 50 to up to 1,000. And actually, a recent segment analysis that we did showed that we're actually performing quite well on a close rate basis for some of our larger segments. So, um, PLG is still important to the business. It's about a third of our business.
Yeah. So, what have you learned about using product focused influence mechanics? It's kind of a big word or big term. I'll define it in a moment. But it's, if you think about
Hmm.
PLG, it's like, well, how do you get that to actually work? And if you talk to Christopher Lockhead, for instance, he's the godfather of category design. He'll literally tell you that PLG is a waste of fucking time. Yet people use it successfully. Not in all cases, and I do believe that context is important, right? You have to have a platform that you're trying to scale, and you have to have users and so forth, self-service and what have you. But what have you learned about little things to drive influence in the context of product adoption or penetration?
Well, I'll say one thing about PLG. I mean, it makes your SaaS numbers look good in terms of cost per acquisition, right? I mean, so LTV to CAC numbers, which investors in the SaaS space love, tend to look pretty good on a PLG business. But in terms of driving influence there, yeah, I think we've learned a lot. We've learned that we've been able to tweak it because the feeder mechanism for PLG is a free trial, and we certainly have large companies that go through a free trial that get a nurture series from us where we're trying to expose them to the platform, and then we decide whether or not we engage the sales team based on the nature of the company that's taking the trial. But we're trying to point them in the right direction of getting use out of the application. And so I'm not sure if I'm answering your question or not,
Yeah.
Matt, but I think the utility for the application is in the eye of the beholder. Why did they arrive in your website the first time? Was it because they have a leads problem, or they have a context problem? Do they have a growth problem? Do they have an automation problem? And so you have to point out all of those things as part of their experience.
And yeah, so where I was going with that is things like the emotional triggers, like social proof, because also I'm curious to understand from you, like, how did you differentiate yourselves? Because CRM as a product or as a value proposition has been around for some time. So curious to understand, like, how did you really differentiate yourselves to get to the kind of scale that you guys are at to today?
Yeah, I like to think about differentiating and trying to stand out in a competitive market as trying to find the white space. And I do think there is some white space in the CRM market, though supposedly there are 1,700 some CRM providers out there in the world, that claim to have some CRM, and there's a lot more niche and sort of vertically focused CRMs than you can imagine, frankly, these days. Um, and so, but there is white space that we've found, and I think that the white space I've kind of alluded to
Mm.
is, number one, when you're a smaller company, you can take better care of your customers, right? And you can differentiate around how you know the customer, how you interact with them, how you serve their needs. Also, I think from the onset, we wanted to be highly customizable, to unique needs, yet easy to use, right? And so we have some things like a blade view that allows you to navigate the application very, very fast, that a lot of other CRMs don't have, including some of the more popular ones. So, there was a period of time where people were using legacy CRMs and they were, used to watching this spinning wheel, and that gets tiresome over time. And honestly, it really hurts
Mm.
go-to-market team's productivity.
Yeah, it's this idea of a white space is really, I want to double click on that for a moment, because I think if you're able to identify a white space or a gap in the market that you can own, then that's when magic really starts to happen. And I write about this in my book, Secrets of Influence. I talk about this idea of media platforms. And so a media platform is not like a YouTube channel, it's not a podcast, it's an idea that you own. It's the white space that you own in the minds of the customers. It's why I choose to do business with you and not your competitors. And that's really the whole business of influence. So curious to, obviously you got this podcast, you've done about 80 episodes now, you said?
Yeah, about 80.
Cool. So, how are you finding that investment of time and capital? How is that contributing to the elevation of your brand and the adoption of your software?
So I first want to tell another white space story, because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then I'll hit that. But so the ultimate white space story for me that I think really puts it home is Netflix, who we all recognize now as who they are. Netflix, multi-billion dollars, but there was a time where it was really hard to believe that they could ever beat Blockbuster, right?
Mm.
And now you could represent Blockbuster on a blank screen because they pretty much don't exist. But Netflix came on and they said, "Hey, we're going to not charge late fees." This is back when they were delivering CDs, and Blockbuster couldn't get out of their own way because the year before they had made $800 million on late fees, right? And so, how does any investor or board member look at that $800 million and make, the decision that Netflix was able to do as a small nimble provider? And they truly found the white space. But I guess, I've been in SaaS 25 years, Matt, and I've seen it ebb and flow and change pretty significantly in that time. And one of the things I learned, as I stared at spreadsheets, was just how important content was as as a source of influence. And I was at a company called ExactTarget in the email space that actually got acquired by Salesforce for 12 years. And I witnessed this as we scaled, because early on we had customer conferences, where certainly we were important, but we were more important as the connector of all the marketers, right? That was our influence, was being able to bring all these marketers together and have a discussion around how to do email marketing better, and deliver the right message to the right person at the right time.
Mm.
And the kind of, that was our secret power, I guess, was the ability to bring marketers together in a conference. And I think in B2B space, a lot of companies think that they can go, "Hey, I'm just going to, go to Google. I'm going to buy some search keywords, and that's going to be our marketing strategy. We're going to do some organic social, and we're going to do a few events, maybe do some webinars, and but it's really all about the content." And I think people are people, whether it's B2C or B2B, and there's the ability to be funny if you want to be funny. And
Mm.
most of the research bears out that humorous brands do better, right? And they have more memorable ads. Um, and again, back to the substance thing. And so we just wanted to have a body of content that spoke to our ideal customer profile, basically, and the kind of pain that they had
Mm.
without, having to promote our product. We were trying to speak and influence around the challenges of the people that we're trying to market to.
Yeah, and I don't think that a 30-second brand ad really gets that substance across in terms of like the people, the leadership of a business. And that's why I think, podcasts specifically are a really great way, not only to open up sales relationships, but also to create marketing content, not thought leadership content, marketing content, but also to grow your network at the same time. So how long have you been running that show for now?
It's about a year and a half, I guess. Yeah. So we kicked it off May of 22.
So, if you think about all the different content formats that are out there, audio, video, written words, white papers, infographics, what have you, what do you find in your particular business or your experience is more effective at really moving people? What I mean by moving people is shifting the perception of the market towards your favor or away from your competition. What sort of content do you find is working most effectively today for you?
It's, the nice thing about doing a podcast is being able to do it like you do video, you do audio, we do transcripts on but I would say it's the video and the ability to bring that in snippets to YouTube, to LinkedIn, and to be able to, target specifically who we're wanting to talk to. That's been, I think, the best source of influence. And I like a lot of it comes back to how people engage with social media and the internet these days. I mean, on their mobile phone,
Mm.
I don't think 12 years ago we could have even thought about how the typical business person would use their mobile device these days, and
I
you
think,
you can reach
yeah, man.
individuals and truly influence them even on a Saturday.
For sure. Do you feel that people underestimate or business leaders underestimate how much content they actually need to put out there to start getting attention? Have you seen that where people are sort of, not doing enough and then wondering why they're not, why they're not influencing anyone, not getting any attention?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the quality has to be there, right? But so does the follow through and the consistency. And I think that's where a lot of brands just don't follow through. They look 90 days down the road and they're like, oh, this doesn't seem to be doing anything, so they quit, right?
Mm.
And I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you're doing like 10 posts a day, which would be high for the average business leader, I think you should be doing 20 times that. In other words, not necessarily 20 times the same different content, but having that frequency of presence in the market should be 20 times higher than what you expect. I'll tell you a quick story. I was off social media for a whole year.
Oh
And on the
wow.
back, and then on the back, I was doing Secrets of Fail, Map Round Show, and all that stuff. And then obviously the book came out, and then we released 300 assets over a period of about 10 days. So from 0 to 300 assets in 10 days. And then the stats from an organic reach perspective were ridiculous.
Oh, I
And
bet.
then also I got booked for 7 podcast interviews within about 10 days, just with having a presence from 0 to there 7, so that's what I'm saying. If you increase that frequency and you were more aggressive, you produce more content consistently with substance, that and ideally that creates value, and that's non-obvious in terms of thinking. That's really how I'm seeing things working from an influence perspective for business leaders who want to really transform their markets and lead at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think that, the illusion of being able to measure everything is what got us on the wrong track in marketing, right? We got so addicted to being able to measure. We spend on A and it results in B revenue. And so that doesn't tend to happen with content. You can't track it, or it's invisible, or it's dark, whatever. And so boards, CFOs, they all lost trust in content. Whereas, when you think about the truly influential brands out there, they all have differentiated, excellent content.
Like, how much content does Gary Vee put out a day? Do you know
Oh,
what I
it's
mean?
insane. That's all he does, right? Yeah.
It's ridiculous, dude. It's unbelievable. And it's an important thing, a point to discuss, right? Because if you want to influence a market, you actually have to be more aggressive in what you're doing, especially now, because with everybody else putting out so much content, how do you break through the noise? And I think this is why thought leadership is so important. How do you approach thought leadership?
That's such a nebulous term. I think so when I think about thought leadership, I think about people that are sort of on the cutting edge of the zeitgeist of what's being talked about in a specific space. And we certainly try to have some thought leadership on our podcast, Closing Time, in addition to some, I would call it more nuts and bolts kind of product marketing or like industry marketing, where you're just trying to further the conversation about whatever it is. In our case, it's CRM and go to market teams. But I think thought leadership it, is what it's an aspirational term for a new way of thinking about something that becomes in the hopes of creating a breakthrough.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because I think thought leadership is essential. I mean, if you look at LinkedIn or Twitter, especially, Twitter lists, here's my favorite. I spent 10 years as a CMO working for some of the best startups in America. Here's 7 things that I learned. Do you know what I mean? Or there's 3
Yeah.
ways to improve your product-led growth. Like that, all that shit is like clickbait. Do you know what I mean? It's not
Hmm.
actual thought leadership. Thought leadership, from my perspective, is original, non-obvious thinking that is evidence-backed and that is proven. That's what drives thought leadership, because I do believe that markets are moving. Social media ecosystems are maturing. Cost of acquisitions in certain markets are constantly in flux.
Hmm.
Cost per leads always moving. And then of course you got artificial generative AI, and everything's always changing. So I think when you strike gold, or when you know for a fact that this a particular system or approach works, and you're able to communicate that point of view, not with, well, I think that AGI is going to be the next big thing in marketing automation. That's rubbish. But if you think about it in the sense of, well, here's the data, here's the evidence that we now know proves that this point of view is true. And that's what people, I think, are looking for. They're looking for value added content that is proven in the real world with evidence.
Yeah, I love that. When I think about the podcasts I listen to, whether they're in business or I'm a drummer, right? And so I watch the YouTube shows and I listen to podcasts, so I'm really compelled when the person is talking about, say, music or drums in a way that's sort of unique and
Yeah.
backed by their ability to actually deliver, right? And so I don't think it's any different whether you're talking B2C or B2B there, or a hobby type content versus business type content.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had quite a few musos on this series.
Is that right?
Yeah, man. Gary Grant was a bass player. He played with like some really famous bands. He was with Bruce Springsteen and this kind of stuff. But what's your advice, Chip? What is your advice to a business leader that's looking to influence their market, and wants to scale their influence on social media, as an example? What's your advice to him or her today?
Well, you have to start, I think is the first thing, and I think what I do is at 8 a.m. every day, I block a half hour, and that's the time where engaging with posts. I'm writing a post. I'm sharing company posts. I'm thinking about other influencers to reach out to, such as yourself, Matt, other people that I can get value from as well. So I think you just have to start. And, I was one of those guys 7 years ago. And granted, like LinkedIn, for example, and social, I think has changed from a business value standpoint within that time period. But there are people now, say like Dave Gerhardt, right? Right. I remember thinking about him, posting every day on LinkedIn in 2016. I was like, who is this guy? He seems like a young little kid posting every day on LinkedIn. Doesn't he have a real job? What's he doing? And now he's laughing all the way to the bank with his, hundreds of thousands of followers, and he's built his business around his influence. So,
Mm.
I think it's just like the best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but start, and then keep going.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Hey, I mean, if I think back to the first few episodes of this show, it wasn't even called the Matt Brown Show back then. It's called the Digital Kung Fu Show, and I really sucked at podcasting. I hated it. It was probably the worst thing ever. But thankfully the medium I feel chose me in some sense, and I just persevered, and then all sorts of great, amazing things happened. It's actually why I'm in the States. Just I can't tell you how much just persevering or starting and then keeping with it, like substance, consistency, charisma, wherever you can, sprinkle that on. But that I wouldn't change it for the world. But to your point, if I hadn't started, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking to you. And I think that's the opportunity for most business leaders. It's just if you start and you persevere with this stuff, and you work with influence systems and frameworks and thought leadership and technology like yours, that's really how you start to make a positive difference to the industries that matter to you.
Yeah, it's so true. Choose your metaphor. It's the 1,000-mile journey begins with the first step, or the rolling snowball like turns into a gigantic snowball by the time it gets to the bottom of the mountain. But you have to start. You got to start rolling.
Yeah, for sure. How do you move a mountain? Start by moving small stones.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Analogies for days on the show. Anyway, Chip Haas, thanks so much, brother, for being on the show. Love what you guys are doing. Good luck with your show, and thank you for being in the hot seat today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. But I'd love to come back if it makes sense, and you'll have to come on our show.
Yeah, man, for sure. Well, this is a reciprocity in action, people. That's why you need to have your own podcast. But
You bet.
we'll catch you all again soon. Thanks, Chip. Everybody else, all the best.